So government plans to destroy around 3,000 unroadworthy minibus taxis in the next 5 months as part of efforts to improve public transport services in South Africa. Officials say the vehicles are the biggest contributors to road crashes. Transport Department spokesperson Collen Msibi with me in studio tonight to talk more about this. A very good evening to you, sir. Welcome. 3,000 vehicles which will be destroyed over a period of 5 months. How will it work?
Well, let's correct that. It is actually a financial year, which is ending in March next year. So basically what we're saying is that we encourage taxi operators to bring their vehicles to be crashed. But they have proven that they are able to do that. So in the past 18 years, we've been able to crash or scrap about 81,000 vehicles. And in so doing, we've been able to also pay about 5.6 billion rands in the scrapping allowance. So for us, it's quite a huge victory because you would recall that 18 years ago when we started with the taxi recap, people thought there were some prophets of doom who said it would not work. So that's why we're saying it is working, and it continues to work, and it is a huge success for us.
So these 3,000 taxis are a target, but up to March next year, just to be clear, because you've now corrected the time frame.
Yes, indeed. It is up to March next year, which is
Why 3,000?
Well, it goes in terms of our budgeting, because remember, when you bring your vehicle, we must also give you a scrapping allowance. And in this case, the scrapping allowance per vehicle is about 151,000. So we need to look at our coffers and see if we are able to even afford a bigger number. And in this case, we've said 3,750.
And the scrapping allowance, as you well know, has been controversial or contentious in the past. Some taxi operators have said that, well, it doesn't allow them in current economic conditions to buy the sort of vehicle that they would want to.
Yes.
And government has responded to that in the past. What is the position now to those who say they're not bringing their vehicles forward because they wouldn't be able to get a great car, so to speak, based on those figures?
Look, we're saying the scrapping allowance, we are not buying somebody a car, but we are saying we're meeting you halfway. So right now, remember when we started in 2006, it was 50,000. So it's sitting at 151,000 now. But we are saying this is just the compensation for your old taxi, which, by the way, if we were to compare, the taxi that we take to scrap is actually far less than what we are offering. So we are saying that this is not to buy taxi operators a car, and I think they understand that. And hence the huge number that we have of taxi operators who have scrapped.
I suppose the challenge remains that for those who, as you say, have cars that are so old that they're worth less than 150,000 rand, they would have to take on debt to some degree to get a proper vehicle, even with the 150,000 rand. And that is why they may be reluctant. So how do you convince them that this is the way to go, given it's pretty much a voluntary process?
Look, they've been coming forward. We find that those who have not been doing so, they have some certain issues that they would need to resolve. For instance, there's issues where there's illegal operators who may not be able to come forward because they don't have operating licenses. But those who are having all those papers that we need have been able to come forward. But we continue to also engage with stakeholders, the taxi industry as a whole, so that they can convince their own operators or their own members to be able to come forward to scrap their vehicles.
Is there any telling at this point how many unroadworthy vehicles form part of the minibus taxi industry?
When we started Taxi Recap 2006, our aim was to scrap 135,000 taxis. So we're sitting at 81,000. So those that are left, we believe that we are able to, because remember now, the taxi recap there is no goal post to say that we're going to end. It's a moving target. So we are saying that those that are left, we believe that they will be able to come forward. But the other process, there's a combo of things we're doing. One of the things we're doing is to go back to cabinet, to focus, because remember when we started scrapping, we said we are scrapping vehicles, those that were registered up to September 2006. So now we're going to go back to cabinet and say we want to now extend that to an extent. So we're still having
to extend it to?
We're having internal discussions on that. We will consult with the minister, and it is up to the minister to then decide when do we take it to cabinet. So we cannot tell at this stage. It's internal discussions.
And government feels the taxi recapitalization program has done well, but it's a hard sell, is it not, for people who use taxis and those of us who see them on the road when you, for example, I'll give you an example last week where on at least 2 occasions I drove behind taxis where the lights were not working. And you could tell that there was much more that was wrong with the vehicle to begin with, yet, and still, it's ferrying hundreds of people a day to and fro.
Honestly, I think there has to be an admission to be made. Because if we were to go to North today, you would find that most of those vehicles that are there are vehicles that were bought with the introduction of the taxi recap. So I think credit is due to government because we think that we've done quite well. But that's not to say we still don't have the moving coffins that we used to have then. They're still there. Hence, we are saying that we need to work quite hard and closely with the taxi industry to ensure that those who haven't scrapped, they must come forward.
And as you say, moving coffins, it's a matter of life and death.
Indeed. So, but you must remember that the main objective of the taxi recap, it was to make this industry safe. Because you must remember, it moves about 60% of the commuters. So it has a bigger share of the public transportation, and it is a backbone of the public transport. So hence we're saying that it is quite important that we address issues of safety.
The taxi industry also wants something that hasn't happened yet from the side of government. That would be subsidization in the form of what's already available, for example, for bus and train services in the country at the moment. And I wonder if that got off the road or was able to move along, if that would help in the longer term to ensure that even the fleet in the sector is up to date. Do you think it would help?
Yes, the recapitalization, it is actually part of that. But there are discussions to look at other subsidization that are being given to the buses and so forth. But this taxi recap, the 5.6 billion, for instance, it's quite a huge amount. Hence, we're saying it is part of it, but there's continued to be discussion in terms of how do we then also accommodate them as far as subsidization of the commuters. We're actually not subsidizing the buses, we're subsidizing the commuters. So we're looking at that to see how the taxi industry can also be involved in that.
We've been looking at it for over 2 decades.
It's not an easy task, but we are looking. As I said, there's a buffet of things that we're looking at, including the issue of supply.
Plus, is that not more than what is reasonable for the taxi industry? Because every time they strike, for example, or they speak about fuel increases, they say they're the only sector they feel neglected in the transport space because they're the only ones with no subsidies.
That is why I'm saying there's a combo of things we need to look at. For instance, there has to be a formalization of the industry, the registration of the taxi drivers. Secondly, we need to look at the supply and demand. If you go out there and see how many taxis are out there, even taxi operators themselves, they say we need to regulate so that there isn't the saturation of the taxi industry. So those are the things you look at. So when you introduce, if you had to introduce a subsidy, as you're saying, you need to have looked and addressed all these issues that we're talking about. That is why we went to the taxi Lihotla the other year, to be able to look at what are the areas that we need to address. And some of them is those, including the issue of subsidization.
Collen Msibi, Transport Department spokesperson. Thank you so much for coming in tonight, sir.
Thanks so much.